Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to World of Warships for our Saturday video being the upgrade and commander build video, where today we're going to be looking over the Andalucía, the tier 9 Spanish heavy cruiser with 9 2 and 34mm guns. She's got a lot going for her. We'll talk about some of the weaknesses, which you're going to see here pretty quickly with the armor layout, and how to build her, and some options there as well that I think there's maybe 2 or 3 ways you could go with the upgrade, or the commander build, excuse me. That being said, what type of heavy cruiser is Andalucía? Is she a brawling, close quarters? Is she a sniper cruiser? Is she a mid-range cruiser? And I personally think she's a mid-range cruiser. Mid-range at the high tier, I typically say 12 to 15 kilometers, and that works out pretty well because of her concealment being 11.7. So that definitely is favorable for you with these guns. And she's not so much a closer range cruiser, despite the fact that she has hydro, despite the fact that she has torpedoes, as you see back here, because once we begin to look at her armor layout, yeah, not so good, as it were. Now, you did see me pushing a little bit in yesterday's video. Part of the reason was I would do that. We whittled down their battleships, and it was really just destroyers and cruisers. And then, you know, it's easy for us to push up, so to speak, with that hydro and also having torpedoes and having the burst fire consumable. But you do want to respect the armor. So you only have a 25mm fore and aft end plating. You do have a little bit of this icebreaker down here, which is 50, but doesn't really do a whole lot for you, so to speak. Same with the deck on the fore and aft end plating. And then on the mid deck plating, it's 27mm, which is also what you see here. And then you have a 40mm armor belt, the torpedo protection, which drops back into 27mm. So you don't really have much of a belt. Most of the battleships that you're going to see at tier 9, tier 10, and tier 11 are going to overmatch you, especially the fact that, you know, you have this 25mm nose, so to speak. So it doesn't really take a whole lot to overmatch that. If I do a calculation here right on my phone, because I just decided to do this on the fly. Yeah, so 357mm or 0.5, so 358mm and higher guns will overmatch your bow. So what? That's it's hard to remember the inches to that here in the game. So you know, most battleships at tier 9 and higher are a larger caliber than that, right? So you do have to be mindful of that. I've got yoinked completely, almost lost all my hit points with the Wisconsin because it's so accurate at long range. So be mindful of that. I'll show you the Citadel, which is a big Citadel. It's a very long Citadel because the ship's pretty long, and it is very high. So you really have to be mindful with this Citadel. If you're going to go broadside, you don't have a amazing turning circle radius, so to speak. Okay-ish rudder shift time, if my memory serves correctly, and comparing it to other tier 9 cruisers. So you have to be mindful of the broadside, or you will get absolutely obliterated. So you're going to be trying to angle as much as you can. Maybe you're going to be kiting, as it were, you know, angling away. So you don't want to push in unless you are really able to easily. When we look at the gun mount armor, it's 229mm on the front, 127 on the side, 178 on the back, and 120 on top. And then your barbette is 177. So we are going to take probably main armaments mod 1 just to help keep our guns in, as well as protecting our torpedoes a bit more. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get right into talking about the modules first. So these are pretty decent 2 and 34mm guns. We're getting the reload time down to 12.3 seconds. I think otherwise it's closer to like 14 if I remember right, because of the main battery mod 3 in the 6th slot. So we are pumping out more DPM. And we have a 180-degree turn time of 25.7 seconds. Now we could get that down, right? We'll talk about that between the upgrades and the commander. Maximum HE shell damage 2,350. Maximum AP shell damage 5,750, which we can actually bump over 6,000 with one of the commander skills, which we'll talk about. Hull A is 43,800. So if you're grinding up the line, get the hull upgrade first, because you're going to jump up over, yeah, it's 4,500 hit points, yeah. to 48,300. And then you get a slight buff to your A defense, slight buff to your maneuverability, but it's mainly those hit points you're going after. Torpedoes, they come as they are. I have a reload time of 106 seconds. Of course, adrenaline rush, you can probably get that down to 100 seconds and beneath. Torpedo range, 8 kilometers. They hit pretty decent for 16,633. Torpedo speed, 62 knots. Detectability range, 1.3 kilometers. Your stock gun range is 15.2 kilometers, but it's not too bad. Don't worry. When you're starting off, you get access to the spotter plane. And then upgraded gunfire control system puts you at 16.7, which is much better, especially if you're seeing tier 9s, tier 10s, and tier 11s, right? If you're top tier and you're seeing tier 8s and 7s, it's not as bad if you're stuck with that 15.2, but it definitely becomes a problem at the higher tier. Speed is something this ship boasts really well with this new tech tree line being put in, 36 knots, and with the Sierra Mike Bravo, to Sierra Mike flag, which adds plus 5%, we get to a max speed of 37.8 knots. This is actually really good and outshines other tier 9 cruisers in terms of speed. So you are quite speedy in being able to reposition yourself around the map due to her having really good propulsion. As we go into the upgrades, the first slot I will recommend would be the main armaments mod 1. This is going to reduce the risk of your main battery and torpedo tubes becoming incapacitated by negative 20%. Main battery torpedo tube survivability plus 50%. Main battery torpedo tube repair time, if either should become knocked out, is reduced by negative 20%. So you're getting them back on a little bit faster. Honestly, I think that one's the best one to go for here. You also have the Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1. This is for secondary and AA. It's not really worth it in my opinion here. Then you have Magazine Mod 1, reducing your ship's magazine detonating by negative 70%. But if you're playing randoms, ranked clan battles, just take the Juliet Charlie combat signal for 96,000 credits. You don't need it in co-op, but why not just take that and then you can have this. We can also talk about the Spotting Aircraft Mod 1 if you wanted to have a longer action time on your spotter plane, but I don't think this ship is like you want to be playing it consistently outside of the 16.7 kilometer range, right? So I don't think it's really worth going for, just the main Armaments Mod 1. The second slot, there's two main options I would say. The first, in terms of a standard upgrade, would be the engine room protection, reducing the risk of your engine and steering gears becoming incapacitated by negative 20%. Engine and steering gears repair time, also negative 20%. I regularly get my engine knocked out, or steering gears knocked out here on the ship, which we'll talk about that with the commander as well. So reducing that chance, because you can see that 25 millimeter aft end plating is just, it's not that great, right? So this is for standard, I would say this. If you have some coal lying around and you're willing to make an investment for a special upgrade, I would say the Hydroacoustic Search Modification 1, which extends the hydro time by plus 20%. You have a 5 kilometer range on the ships, 3.5 kilometer on the torpedoes. Here in the armory, it's going to be for sale for 17,000 coal. If you have access to the coupon, which resets every update, so once a month, I recommend using that coupon. So I usually buy a special upgrade once a month just to utilize the coupon. It takes off 25% if this ever loads. So getting you down to 12,750 coal, if I remember correctly off the top of my head. Yeah. So a lot better to run here. So whether you're going to be playing want this on Andalucía or you're going up the line to the tier 10, then you can just demount it and remount it to the tier 10, which is what I would do. I'm trying to save some coal up right now, but that would be the most ideal upgrade to run here on the second slot, in my opinion, because you do need it. A lot of torpedoes at the high tier, right? With subs and destroyers and battleships. The list goes on and on. For the third slot, I've gone for the Aiming Systems Mod 1. I'll put it on the bottom right side of the screen here. The main reason we take this is to increase our maximum horizontal and maximum vertical main battery shell dispersion. Reduces it by negative 7%, which means we're getting tighter. So we're probably shaving between 6 to 15 meters off of either one of those. So just more accurate salvos, which I quite like accuracy. I lean towards this one for most of my cruisers. Now you do get a slight buff on your torpedo tube traverse speed and your secondary battery firing range and dispersion, but it's mainly the main battery is why you're taking this. Otherwise, you might prefer the main battery mod 2, improving your main battery traverse speed, which again it's not so hot. I mean, it's 25.7 seconds, and we get a nerf on our main battery traverse speed out of taking the main battery mod 3, right by, was it negative 13%. So it's more kind of similar to battleship, battle cruiser turret traverse speeds. But as long as you pay attention and you're trying to adjust your turrets in advance utilizing the right mouse key for free look, right, that's really helpful. So this or this, your mileage may vary. It might be your personal preference, because I know some commanders who just can't, players who can't stand having slow turret traverse times on their main battery. But in terms of accurate salvos, I think Aiming Systems Mod 1 makes a lot of sense here with these 234mm guns. In the fourth slot, I'm going to recommend the Propulsion Modification 1. Time taken to reach full engine power when accelerating, negative 50%. You know, when you're playing at that 16.7 kilometer range or utilizing your spotting aircraft, because of your armor not being so great, you want to be trying to juke some salvos at range and distance, especially when you're trying to avoid torpedoes or submarines pinging you and launching torps, right? This helps you get out of the way or move, reposition a little bit faster from being at a standstill. So I do prefer Propulsion Mod 1 on the fourth slot. You might also consider Steering Gears Mod 1. This would be my second one I would go for, reducing your rudder shift time by negative 20%. So then you're going to be around 9 seconds on your rudder shift time. But I think the prop mod is the best. In terms of your fifth slot, the Concealment System Mod 1, which reduces your ship's detectability range by air, negative 10%, squadron detectability range by negative 10%. Dispersion of shells fired by enemies attacking your ship is actually increased, so meaning they have worse dispersion when they shoot at your ship. It's only a little bit, but it helps. And I think this is the best because it helps you play around that mid-cruiser role a lot better at the 11.7 kilometer range. So I prefer this best. And also, you know, your detectability by air isn't so great for higher tier cruiser. You know, it's like 8.7. I think like Salem is like, or Des Moines are around like 6.4 maybe, and you know, Minotaur is 6.9, but her AA is 6.9 range. So this one is the best. I think most players will appreciate this. If she was a tankier heavy cruiser, then I might be more open to Steering Gears Mod 2, but she's just not a tanky heavy cruiser. She's quite weak in her armor scheme. So I don't really recommend this unless maybe you're considering going for a Lighthouse build, but I don't think Andalucía has the DPM to really carry out that role so great. The sixth slot, two options here. Main battery mod 3, which is getting us down to that 12.3 second reload time versus I think it's 14 if I remember right. So I like to go for DPM and I like to go for accuracy. Those are kind of the mixture of the two things I like to see on my ships, especially cruisers and battleships. So having the 16.7 is great. You have access to the spotter plane, which makes me more comfortable to go for main battery mod 3. If it didn't have a spotter plane, then I would definitely be like, yeah, you probably want to consider gunfire control system mod 2. But this would be the second option just in general, to get your main battery firing range out by plus 16%. So if our range is 16.7 now, I'll go ahead and do the math for you guys. It'd be 19.3 kilometers, almost 19.4. So that's nice. That's more like a battleship that you might see at Tier 9 type of range, and instead of having spotter planes. So, you know, you can try it out, see what you feel best. If you feel like you're able to do a little bit better and playing that more mid-cruiser range role. Because once you start going out, let's say beyond 15 kilometers, like you begin to become more of a long-range cruiser, right? Just in general, in my opinion. So I think this is the best, but again, your opinion, your preference, you can go with either. Just I lean towards main battery mod 3. In terms of the armament, we have high explosive, which is decent. These guns, as I mentioned in the Friday highlight, they're very identical to Drake's guns, except they don't have that increased HE penetration. We do have a nice 16% chance of starting a fire on a target, which we can increase. and we do a maximum damage of 3,350 with 841 meters a second initial shell velocity. So I do like seeing that here. Actually, is that newer? They put the main battery shell dispersion on the bottom. Huh, I think that's the horizontal, if I remember right, versus vertical. So you can actually see that get changed now if we put the aiming systems on as an example. Must be new with this update 13.6. Armor piercing shells, again 234mm guns. They have the same initial shell velocity of 841 meters a second. Your maximum damage is 5,750. We can bump this over 6,000. I'll talk about that with the commander here in just a minute. Yeah, torpedoes, as we talked about in looking at the modules. Again, 106-second reload, 8-kilometer range. They hit pretty good, 16,633. Like, I think the torpedoes on Schlieffen do like 13,500 as a comparison. Sometimes you have torpedoes that hit really hard, average, or bleh. And these are actually pretty decent for a Tier 9 cruiser. Speed is 62 knots, technical range 1.3 kilometer. Then you have depth charge airstrike, a 7-kilometer range. So better than it being ship-based. It'd be pretty painful if these were ship-based ASW, but it's airstrike based. You get 2 available flights, 1 aircraft and attacking flight, and bombs and a payload 2, doing a maximum bomb damage of 4,200. And then you have the burst fire consumable, which we can click on here. Now, if you don't have the main battery mod 3, then this will be a 33-second reload time with, you can see, 29 seconds. Interval between individual shots is 1.41 seconds. Number of bursts in a series is 2. So you can see as we do this, you can see the reload time. This is something new that Wargaming just did with update 13.6. If you click on the burst fire or these different funny button abilities, then we can see how it gets reflected here. But then, of course, you're going to have that much longer reload time on both the high explosive and the armor piercing. So we talked about how to utilize that in yesterday's video. I'm not going to do that here. Damage control party, action time 5 seconds, cooldown time 60 seconds, pretty typical for a cruiser in the high tiers and just in general. And you have access to the repair party, which I need to just buy one here. You have 289 HP per second, consumable action time 20 seconds, cooldown time 80 seconds, number of consumables 4. This is with Superintendent. Oh, I didn't realize that was still clicked. Without the India Delta combat signal, your HP per second is 241, width is 289. I'll take this in randoms, clan, and ranked battles as an example if I was playing Andalucía. Otherwise we wouldn't take it. Then you have access to either the spotting aircraft or the fighter. If you're playing ranked with Andalucía, I would say take fighter. Otherwise you just want the spotting aircraft. Main battery firing range plus 20%. Action time 100 seconds, cooldown time 240 seconds, which is pretty rough. It's a really long cooldown time, so usually in the opening minutes of the battle, I like to try to go ahead and pop off the spotting aircraft because you're kind of playing more at range because you're pretty vulnerable to your 9 cruiser. And we get 5 of these. Fighters, yeah, you could maybe in ranked, this is where you would take fighter, not so much the spotting aircraft. Then we have, in our last slot, we have hydroacoustic search and defensive AA fire. But hydroacoustic search, you're going to have games that don't have CVs, right? Or hybrids, I guess I have to say now. So we are always going to have torpedoes. That's like the one thing you can always count on in World of Warships. So I prefer running with the hydroacoustic search. Detection of torpedoes, 3.5. Enemy ships, 5 kilometers. You spot submarines at their maximum depth of 2 kilometers. Action time, 100 seconds. Cooldown time, 120 seconds. Number of available consumables, 4. Now, as we were talking about with the hydroacoustic search mod 1, which plus 20%, this would bump you up to an action time of 120 seconds. So you'd have a full 2 minutes on your hydroacoustic search. Defensive AA fire, it's possible to run, but I don't think it's the best overall to run here on the Andalucía. You have an okay-ish AA rating. It's 75. So it's like, meh. If you really wanted to play an AA cruiser, like, it's not Andalucía. There's other Tier 9 cruisers that play the role much better. Now, one of the things we can take, because we're decently consumable heavy, is a November Foxtrot. This is going to reduce the preparation reload time on your consumables. So from your DCP, you go from 60 to 57, 80 to 76. 240 to 228, and then 120 to 114. And then we can also take the Sierra Bravo. This is extending your action time on your hydroacoustic search. So then we see 110. So if we did 110 and then we were doing the hydroacoustic search mod 1, we would be like 132 seconds, something like that. So a nice combination to run here. Otherwise, I like to run the Hotel Yankee, damage caused by ramming an enemy, plus 50%, damage received when ramming an enemy, negative 20%, so you take less damage. And then I like to increase our fire chance. So then we're going from 16% to 18%, which is pretty decent for a tier 9 cruiser here in the game. And utilizing that with your burst fire, which again I talked about in yesterday's video. Now in terms of our commander, you can see that we only have a 14 point because now it's like there's so many different nations and different commanders, and then you're doing different things depending on whatever commander you're running. So we're taking and building up a new commander. So he's decent. He's got 14 points. So I'll go ahead and just run you the course of what I'm running here and talk about some options of how we can switch it around. So because of your turret traverse speed not being so great, I took grease the gears. These are 234mm guns. Usually the higher the caliber, the longer the turret traverse time. So plus 15%, which helps us not be closer to that 30 seconds otherwise without it. And then for a 3-point commander, I take priority target. Detection indicator additionally shows the number of opponents on the enemy team that are currently aiming at your ship with their main battery guns. So you might see like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you see like 4 or 5, then that means probably should go dark. And then you can also see if a destroyer is launching torpedoes at you. When he switches between his main battery guns and torpedoes, when he's looking at you main battery guns, it'll say like 1 as an example, or let's say there's 2, and then you see it go like 1 detected, 1 detected, 1 detected. That means he's switching between his guns and his torpedoes, and he's likely to launch torpedoes at you. So that's a little bit of a tell. Takes some time to kind of understand this, but it's helpful. I used it in the game yesterday. 6-point commander, I like going for adrenaline rush. Alternatively, you could go for superintendent, but let's just say you went for adrenaline rush with a 6-point commander. As you lose each 1% of HP lost, your main battery reload time, your torpedo tube reload time, your airstrike armament reload time, your secondary battery reload time are reduced by negative 0.2%. You get slight buff on your continuous AA damage. So if we see 12.3, you're going to eventually drop beneath 12 seconds and then down to like 11 seconds and probably under 11 seconds with utilizing Adrenaline Rush. And then for a 10-point commander, I go for Concealment Expert. So, ultimately between that and your 5th slot on your upgrades, that's what gets you down to 11.7 by sea and 8.7 by air. After this, for a 13-point commander, then I would probably go ahead and pick up the Superintendent, just so you can have that 4th repair party, that 4th hydroacoustic search, that 5th spotter plane as an example. Because I have burned through all 4 heals and gone through all my hydros here on Andalucía, so I quite like having more consumables at hand, and let's face it, you can never have enough heals in World of Warships. After this 13-point skill, then probably what I'd consider for a 16-point commander, I'd go for Survivability Expert. So we can tip our hit points past 50,000 into 52,350. So each tier you have, your hit points increase by plus 450. So then you'll get another 450 hit points if you take this commander to the tier 10 heavy cruiser I'm spacing the name on right now. So pretty nice to have here, in my opinion, in taking the Survivability Expert. And then let's say, for an example, you want to increase your DPM. Top grade gunner would be a skill to consider. You get the permanent effect of a negative 10% on your secondary battery reload time. But then the can be activated is once there's a ship within your standard detectability range. So within our standard detectability range of 11.7, we will get a negative 8% on our main battery reload time. So then we go from, we're 11.3 now, or sorry, 12.3. We drop beneath 12 seconds with that reload time. And then that leaves you with 1 skill point, which then I would probably tell you to take either the Last Stand skill, because I have had my steering gears and engine completely knocked out, but with this you can partially able to sustain speed and maneuverability with the engine and steering gears incapacitated. Otherwise, because these guns are really great between the armor piercing and high explosive, the gun feeder is also a really good option here. Main value shells, top type switching time, negative 40%. So then you see 7.4 seconds then versus the whole 12.3. Sometimes it's a pain when if you're still you've used your burst fire and then it's been reloading and like, oh, I want to switch it to high explosive or from high explosive to armor piercing. Then you have to wait that full 29-second reload time that we have on this build right now, versus if you had gun feeder, then you don't get penalized as much, right? So that's one way to do it between these two. If you were saying flimsy between this, what would you do? I mean, I've been living without Last Stand. Sometimes I wish I had gun feeder. So that's an option there. I mean, another thing we could actually do here is we could drop top grade gunner, and you could do this. So heavy AP shells. Heavy AP shells increases our AP shell damage if you have a main battery caliber of 190 millimeters and above. So we go from doing, what was it, 5,000, where'd it go? I'm blind. 5,750 to 6,038. And then you could take both. You get the best of both worlds, right? That's kind of the thinking there. But on the other hand, let's say you didn't even want those two. Then I would be looking at considering either Eye in the Sky, which reduces the consumable cooldown time on your spotting aircraft, which without November Foxtrot, it's 240 seconds. So to drop down to 120 seconds, and then with November Foxtrot, 120 to like, I don't know, it would be like 112, I think, something like that. So you're getting your spotter planes back more frequently. Or you could talk about Demolition Expert if you really want to increase your fire chance from 18% with the 2 combat signals to 19%. But I think in general, I'm quite fine with the 18%. So this is probably what I would like to do here instead. So this would be probably my second build option. Otherwise, you know, you could do a mix like that, or you could drop that and do something like this or this. So I think my build option 1 for me personally would be this, because if she was more tanky, then I might actually consider top grade gunner, right? But she doesn't take hits very well, and especially at the high tier where there's just so much overmatch in the game, it kind of leans me a little bit away from the top grade gunner with how Andalucia's playstyle is. If she had more armor, if she had a faster reload time than the 12.3, then maybe. So this would probably be my build option 1. Build option 2 it's kind of a tie in my mind. It'd either be Last Stand or it'd be Gun Feeder, something like that. Build option 3 would just be this. And then build option 4 could be that. So it's kind of up to you and what you feel comfortable with. So if there are some Andalucia commanders already and you're doing something a little different than what I've suggested, feel free to let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, it's going to bring this video to a close. So we got it underneath 30 minutes, which is great because 30 minutes is the goal or less. So if you liked today's video, give a thumbs up. If you didn't, give a thumbs down. Subscribe if you want to see more. If you're subscribed, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you to my Patreon supporters, and we will catch you next time. Take care.